Yo, what up, man? Base Boxing Basement, Triple B. Hit, smash the like, it's free. Keep sickening haters away. The jealousy, the haterism, Yeah, so, it's not been a good week for boxing, or good few weeks in terms of actual fights, yeah? Although Eddie Hearn's side piece, Sky Nicholson, beat up some useless, I don't know, Indian girl or something. Actually stopped her. But you can see this girl, she never really fought. Sky Nixon, you can't punch away out of a wet paper bag, hit her. She turned away and looked like, she looked like, when someone who's never been hit in the face and you hit them, yeah, and their face kind of goes, they stare for a minute and then their face kind of scrunches up and looks sick. And then she was like turned away and then Sky attacked her. Anyway, yeah. And that was like the supposed fight of the week. So, but they've been talking about a couple of fights. Javon Davis vs. Jake Paul, which is ridiculous. Some guy in the pub told me. Yeah. We was talking about boxing. I went on another rampage, by the way. I'll do another video on that. I went on a rampage on Saturday. Yeah. And I'm talking Quentin Rampage Jackson. You know what I'm saying? But I'll do that in another video. This is a boxing video. And so Javon Davis, Jake Paul, I said, no way it's been signed. And this guy showed me, and I was like, what the heck? And I said to him, look, it's going to be, I'll do a full video on it, but my immediate thoughts are it's going to be scripted. Yeah, no one's going to get knocked out or hurt. And, whatever. It's stupid. But an interesting fight was Francis Ngannou vs. Deontay Wilder. I'm not even sure if it's been signed, signed and sealed, because I can't find no odds on it yet, which makes you think it's still in negotiation. But, to be fair, and most people go, pro boxing fans, Ngannou's going to get smashed by Wilder because, Wilder, yeah, he's past it, but he was still a heavyweight champion. Well, it's not that simple, was it? And some people are going to say, well, Ngannou, handled Fury, and he should have won, and he dropped him. So it's a complicated fight. I like to see the odds before I tell you who to bet on, If Ngannou is a big underdog, I'm definitely putting on him, right? If it's evens, for example, I don't know. I don't know if I'd bet on it, The problem is, we start with Deontay Wilder, so, his age, okay, firstly. He's 40, right, now? He's 40. Obviously he was considered, no, he's 39, he'll be 40 later this year, he'll be 40. But, he hasn't looked great recently, It kind of reminds me, when you get those punchers and then get whacked out a couple of times, they tend to lose their confidence. It happens to David Price. When David Price and early pros are knocking everyone out, and it's like people say it's almost like his power disappeared. Well, it didn't. He just couldn't commit anymore because he knew he was chinny. It's the same thing with Deontay Wilder. 44 wins, 43 KOs. That's the highest KO ratio ever for a heavyweight champion, right? But obviously, he's got 4 losses there. And a draw against Fury. We'll remember that fight. We don't need to talk about it. The alleged Undertaker rising from the dead ting. Which I actually thought Fury won on points. But Wilder had dropped him twice. Remember that. And he's got 4 losses, right? 2 of them against Fury. The first one, he got a hiding from Fury. And was stopped in 7. The second one was more of a dangerous fight. Fury getting dropped. Coming back to flatten Deontay Wilder. Wilder was down 3 times and Fury was twice down. And it was a real tear-up. I mean, that trilogy of fights is really... I don't know if they'll talk about it in the future as one of the best trilogies, but they should do, especially for heavyweights. Yeah. And he came back to knock out his friend, Robert Helenius, in a round. He was looking at the stars, Helenius. Helenius has always been a disappointment. He's not a bum, but he failed a drug test later on as well, which is weird because he never had one of those bodies that looked ripped. Joseph Parker gave him a complete boxing lesson after that. I didn't think Wilder won a round, and one of the judges agreed. And then there was one of my favorite fights, Zhale Zhang. Zhale, the big bang zhang, banged Wilder. I mean, he had a massive weight advantage, but, Wilder's legs, if Wilder had normal sized legs, i.e. in comparison to his body, instead of those twiglets, he'd weigh an extra 30 pounds, right? Or 20 pounds, certainly. But because his legs are so skinny, but he's got the broadest shoulders. I know heavyweights who met him and they said, man, he's big, which is weird because he's considered small in weight. They said his hands were huge, his shoulders were so broad. He's tall, but he's just got them skinny legs. And the Big Bang, really, really spoke to him. Really spoke to him. And he chased him across the ring. Wilder didn't know where he was. He spun around. He started complaining to the ref about something. And the huge Big Bang just lurched over towards him and whacked him out, man. That was a great fight. And then, of course, he came back to fight Tyrell Anthony Herndon. He stopped him in 7. Herndon is chinny. He'd been stopped. He'd been stopped. Now he's been stopped 5 times out of 6 fights, including getting KO'd in the first round by F.A. Jagba. And Corey Barlow. That's right, the Corey Barlow, with a record of 2 wins, 4 losses, and 2 draws. Knocked out this Tyrell Herndon in a round. Yet, Corey can knock him out in a round. But Deontay Wilder took 7 rounds. So the insinuation is that he's lost his confidence or he's lost his power. To me, everyone gets old. And everyone goes, oh, the power's the last thing to go. That's another one of those lies. One of those cliches. It's not. You can't get more powerful when you get older. You don't retain that power. What it is the fighters, reflexes get dulled quicker. So they retain their power for a bit longer, but they also become more flat-footed. You look at George Foreman. And George Foreman wasn't the violent puncher he was in his second career than his first career. He would club you down. Yeah, he had some great KOs against Big Jerry Cooney, for example, but he also went the distance with a lot of guys that I'm pretty sure the young Foreman, the former number 1, would have been knocked out. So, with Wilder, I think it's like David Price. He lost his confidence. Think about it, right? In the last 6 fights, and that's 6 fights in 5 years, he got battered by Fury twice and knocked out brutally in the third fight. Right? Joseph Parker completely outboxed him, and actually came close to stopping him, I thought, a few times. And Zhou Zhang absolutely banged Wilder's ass. And I thought that was going to be it. But Wilder's got 8 kids, so he come back because he needed the money. He probably misses the buzz too, but you can be sure it's for the money. Because he's one kind of an idiot that spends money on gold jewellery and houses that are too big. Well, I suppose he needs quite a lot of rooms in his houses if you've got 8 kids. I don't know I'm pretty sure they won't be by the same baby mother. And Wilder playing that crybaby PR story, oh, I only started boxing because my daughter had problems. Well, that may or may not be true, you know what I'm saying? But it's more likely one of those PR stories that they think, oh, well, mate, because then everyone will think you were such a good guy. And Wilder's a piece of shit. He banged his brother's wife, didn't he, or girlfriend? He's a piece of shit. It reminds me of Ryan Giggs, a rich guy with loads of money who can probably in the hood, Wilder could get loads of hood rats. But no, he decides to bang his own brother's woman. Same with that piece of shit Ryan Giggs, whose eyes are too close together, really, really too close. They're like 2 little currants right in the middle of his face. Yeah? His eyes are so close together, it's like 2 little beady little currants. Anyway. Wilder's a piece of shit. Never liked him. He's also a bit fruity with the twerking and so on. Now, his punches are the last thing to go, but he didn't look like a great puncher in his last recent fights. After Hellenius, obviously ironed out Hellenius, but Tyrell Herndon, the chinny Tyrell Herndon, went 7 rounds. Now, as I said, he's probably a bit gun shy. He's probably a bit shop worn. He's had a lot of fights. He's probably a bit shop worn now. Them beatings take something out of your brain, especially the Fury ones and the Zhou Zhang knockout. So, Wilder's not as dangerous and he's almost 40. As for Ngannou, obviously he's not a boxer. He's an MMA guy, but his his strength, you would say, would be his hands. He can punch very hard. He's a giant buck. A giant buck. A silver buck. He's a silver buck, right? And obviously he's pumped full of PDish because, like, you look at him when he's and they you look at him when he started training, and he was just a big guy but normal body, and now he's just great powerhouse, and you just don't get that big without PDish, especially in that time frame. And and he's got another subject. Oh, I used to work in the salt mine. Oh, I came over to France to find a better life. All that nonsense. They just if you know about the agenda, that's just another agenda push thing. Oh, everybody should come to Europe to find a better life. Why don't you build a better country and a better life in your turd hole? Why? Well, because you're a bunch of low IQ Egypts, because there ain't no rhetorical questions on the Triple B. The reason they can't build no civilization, and the guy that discovered DNA said this, he got the IQ too low. The IQ are too low to build a functional society. You need a small village life. People don't realize sub-Saharan Africans weren't even at the top of the food pyramid, man. Yeah, they couldn't defend themselves against lions or elephants. Yeah, they didn't have no good weapons. You know what I'm saying? Leopards, stuff like that. They were number 5 on the food chain. That's how low they were. Anyway, Ngannou, so, his boxing is 2 fights, right? The Fury fight was an absolute shocker to me. I thought Fury, he looked in terrible shape. He really didn't look like he trained. And I always say with Fury, Tyson Fury, when he doesn't train, he can look awful against ordinary guys like Nevian Pakic and stuff like that, and get dropped. He always seems to get dropped when he hasn't really trained properly. And then, but when he's on form, he's a top heavyweight, ever. Not ever, not number 1. I'm just saying he could be considered one of the top heavyweights. But, he did not really train for Ngannou. He looked disgusting. All he could talk about was Ngannou's Corey. Get it out. Have you got a big card? It's just cringe. The Corey King. That one, the Corey King's Vianello. But Tyson Fury is the king, the regal, royal Corey inspector for all the UK. So if he turns up in your door, you got to get your Corey out and he'll inspect it with and Big Shane Fury, Sugar Shane Fury, will be carrying the equipment to do the measuring. You know what I'm saying? And apparently they were laughing so much when they measured Adam Smith's Corey, because it's so small. And Shane's like, look at this. Dyson, look at this Cardi. It's pathetic. And it's cut. It's cut. Well, of course it's cut. Anyway, so, Ngannou surprised me. I thought he was just going to get outboxed and get stopped in about 8 rounds, and that was it. But nah, he dropped Fury. I actually think the decision could have gone his way. People say, oh, Fury landed more punches, but, what about if it's got to be effective punches that count, right? So, and then, of course, Ngannou went against Gage. Now, the one thing with Gage you will get, and I've got to give, that fruity buck some credit. Obviously, he's got his PEDs all over the place, but so does Ngannou. But he did really take care of Ngannou. He absolutely flattened him. I thought he would take it. I thought Gage would like box and just would win, but I thought he might even go the distance. He might just look to outboxing Ngannou because he's dangerous. But I'll give Gage credit. He boxed a perfect fight. Yeah? He kept on dropping a jab to the body. So Ngannou's hands come down. Yeah, and he dropped the jab to the body, and then he pulls over a massive right hand and flattens him. He was down in round 1 and absolutely flattened in round 2. To be honest, but and you could see it where you're watching. You're going, Gage actually used his brain. He used his brain. I don't know. I think his IQ is probably about 75. His brain is probably, around a peanut size, that kind of thing. Maybe I'm giving him too much credit. Maybe it's 65. No, I think 75 is reasonable because he can talk okay. But he's definitely got a peanut-sized brain. But he managed to box a good plan, and he absolutely flattened. And there's a big difference, being hit by Stipe Miocic, albeit with, little gloves, and being hit by a heavyweight who's been trained all his life to hit you with a massive right hand. Yeah, even with the gloves. I mean, Ngannou's face, as soon as he took that, the first knockdown, the first proper shots, you saw his face change, goes, oh, I see. Now that's what it's like to be hit with a real punch, a hard punch, by a hard-hitting heavyweight fighter, So what would happen? I don't know. Nothing would surprise me. I actually lean slightly towards Ngannou because I think Wilder's that short and that gun shy. Yeah, I mean, he looked awful against Herndon. Yeah, and as I said, he's the last few fights. He's won two. Is it 3 of the last 6? Oh, sorry, bro. I mean, Deontay Wilder has been stopped. Right? In the last 5 years, he's been stopped 3 times. 2 of them are devastating. You know what I'm saying? So, it's not surprising he's doubting his chin a bit and he's had a few beatings. Sorry, he's lost. Yeah, he's only won 2 of the last 6 fights in 5 years. And he's been KO'd 3 times. Brutally. So, he will be gun shy. He knows Ngannou can punch. Both of them are aging, but Ngannou is not shop worn. I'm pretty sure. I mean, he never really took any beatings. Yeah, in MMA, he didn't really take many shots. He was slightly staggered by Stipe Miocic, which was interesting. Before he knocked out Miocic, he was chinny. But and then he went. He's had one fight, hasn't he? Ngannou. He's had one fight since Gage ironed him out, right? And it was in a PFL. It was an MMA fight, but we kind of knew it was going to be stand-up. I remember that I didn't put a bet on, and I'm very annoyed because I remember thinking, looking at this other guy who's fighting, some Brazilian guy, right? Who as well is meant to be a puncher, right? But what's his name? Ferreira? Let me have a look at this. One. Oh, it's not even listed on BoxRec. They don't list any of the MMA fights, do they, on BoxRec? That's why. But yeah, so he ironed him out and around. I remember thinking just before the fight started, after watching that guy, even though he's a huge lump, I still can't remember his name, Pereira, whatever his name is, and he, but I was like, he's not really a good puncher. I mean, sorry, he's not a boxer, and he holds his chin up. Yeah, that's right, Renan Ferreira. Oh, Ferreira. I don't know how to pronounce it in Portuguese. But, so, I mean, he really flattened him. And I remember going, he's going to do it. I just didn't put the bet on. That's stupid. He ironed him out. So, Ngannou's not shop-worn. That's the thing. He hasn't taken any beatings. Yes, he got brutalized by Gage, but he hasn't had any long beatings, unlike Wilder has. Wilder has had several severe beatings. Yeah? 2 by Fury and 1 by Zhang, right? And then getting outclassed by Joseph Parker. So, I genuinely think Ngannou will win. I think he will come doing what he knows how to do. And, he's not a bad boxer, even though Gage just out-experienced him and just he had a good game plan. He can still bang. He's violent. He can hit hard, very hard. Wilder's, who's got the better chin? I'd probably say Ngannou, even though he got absolutely flattened by Gage. Wilder's chin, there was rumours it was dodgy. He shows a lot of heart, though, Wilder. He showed a lot of heart for his Tyson Fury, but probably because he didn't want to lose to no white boy. No joke. So, I actually lean towards Ngannou. I actually hope it happens as well, even though it's a stupid... I mean, it's not a celebrity fight. These are real fighters, but what I mean is it's it doesn't mean much in boxing terms. One guy who hasn't won a single boxing fight, who's 38, another guy, who's only won 2 of his last 6, and is shot worn. So, but for entertainment's sake, I hope it happens. And I actually think, I mean, it's perfectly possible Wilder will land that big shot. But he seems gun shy, and to me, it's more possible that Ngannou will land a big shot. on a slightly chinny, shop-worn Wilder and knock him out. But, you know, as I said, you got to wait for the odds before I can tell you who we'd bet on. But if Ngannou is 3-1 or even longer, underdog, then I'm going to put a little bit of money on him. Peace in the Middle East.